Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile phones are turned off or switched to silent. Thanks very much. My name is Councillor Westgold and I chair this meeting. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors. To my left-hand side, we have Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillor Shima Abuki, Councillor Sophie Corning, Councillor Michael Nolan and Councillor Felicity Sinfield. On the other side of the horseshoe table is Councillor Victor Franco, Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith, Councillor Rob Ballier, Councillor John Friend Pereira and Councillor Chris Pattis. I also acknowledge Brian Wee, different from the briefing, on my left-hand side. And to my right, Director of Urban Planning, Mr. Scott Walker. Other officers are present in the chamber and will be introduced as they present their items for this evening. As a general introduction, I'd like to note that we will be live streaming tonight's proceedings on Council's YouTube. We shall also be recording it and it will be available duly thereafter on the same website. The primary purpose of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee is to deal with issues under the Planning and Environment Act and the Building Act. This committee has delegated authority to make decisions on behalf of Council. For those presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced first by an officer. I will then call you forward one by one if you'd given us your name and ask you to join us at the table. If you are making a submission, please present your viewpoint clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the item being considered. Please do not repeat, if you wouldn't mind, items that others have mentioned. If you disagree with what's being put forward for the evening, it'd be good if you could suggest other alternatives that might satisfy your concerns. There is a strict 3-minute limit for all speakers, including councillors. I as chair can vary that, but seldom do. At the 2.5-minute mark, I will ring a bell, indicating you have 30 seconds left to complete your presentation. I would ask you this evening, although I don't think there'll be any disputes along these lines, to show due courtesy to each other and respect also to the committee as proceedings go forward. I would also, for those who haven't been here before, make a practice of speaking directly into the microphone so we can all hear what you have to say. I will now move to apologies. Mr. Wee, do we have any apologies this evening?
Through you, Chair, there are no apologies this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wee. We will now go to adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting held on the 5th of May and the 12th of May. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt these minutes? Councillor Ballier.
So moved, Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Happy to second. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone opposed? There is no one. I will now put the motion. Those in favour? That indicates no one is opposed. I now declare that motion carried. Declaration of conflict of interest. Councillors and council officers, are there any conflicts of interest that you anticipate this evening? There are none, thank you. We can move straight into the body of the meeting then. We move directly to item 4.1, the Victorian Government Planning Reforms. Tonight we have an update, and that will be given by Mr. Scott Walker, Director, Urban Planning.
Thanks, Chair. I'll introduce the item very briefly and then hand over to Christian Wilson, our coordinator of the strategic planning team, to introduce a report and explain a little bit further. But this is an opportunity this evening for us to provide an update for councillors on the Victorian Government planning reforms. This is a program of reforms that the government has been introducing over a number of years now. There have been a number of decisions that have been made that do impact on the Boroondara community that have happened over the last couple of months, and that's what this report provides an outline on. So I'll hand over to Mr Wilson now to take us through that a bit further.
Thank you, and through you. Good evening, everyone. The report presented to you tonight provides an update on the Victorian Government's planning reforms. Since the last update at the end of March in 2025, several key reforms have progressed or have been finalised. Specifically, the report provides an overview on the Parliamentary Select Committee process that dealt with 3 amendments introducing new planning controls for activity centres and the surrounding residential catchments, as well as the townhouse and low-rise code. Attached to the report are the submissions that have been made to that committee, and it outlines the outcomes of that through the parliamentary inquiry and the defeat of a motion to rescind those amendments. The other major planning reform finalised on the 11th of April was the introduction of new planning controls for Camberwell Junction Activity Centre and the residential area around it. That includes the introduction of the built form overlay and the housing choice and transport zone to those areas. Also in the report addressed is a submission by the Municipal Association of Victoria that was lodged to the Victorian Government on the Planning and Environment Act review. While the Victorian Government is currently not seeking any feedback or input into that review, the MAV has provided a substantial submission outlining what the industry is looking for, the local government sector is looking for as part of that review, and that's attached to the report. Since the last report, the Victorian Government has also commenced work on the additional train and tram zone activity centres, in particular Group 1, which includes the Hawthorn, Glenferrie, Auburn Road Corridor and Kew Junction Activity Centre. That work is currently in its early stages with existing conditions analysis. The planning for the other 3 centres or stations, Riversdale, Williston and Ashburton, will follow later in the year. And currently we're still in the stage 1 consultation for that first group of centres. The last reform addressed in the report is the introduction of the Great Design Fast Track, a new planning pathway under the existing development facilitation program that seeks to encourage well-designed townhouse and apartment developments between 2 and 8 stories. And the report outlines some of the key issues that officers can foresee happening based on experience with the existing development facilitation program and applications that are within Boroondara. Officers have also prepared a revised recommendation to the one that's in the published agenda, and that's being brought up right now. Thank you. It's substantively longer than the previous one, so I won't read it out. But what it substantially does, it provides greater clarity around the advocacy and future advocacy and what Council's position is on key themes and issues around the planning reforms. And you see the list there. It also, at point number 6, has a further point around how we will, or that we will continue to engage, educate and inform the community of planning reforms as they happen and as information becomes available. That concludes my introduction. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
This evening, 5 in our gallery have indicated that they do wish to speak. 1 is against the recommended motion, although that has altered to some degree. 1 we're not too certain about, and 3 are in support. I will call you forward one at a time. I first call upon Mr. Frank Etner to come forward and join us at the table. Would you like to take a seat? And the microphone's on. I will ask you to start with, even though we know it, your name and the suburb in which you reside. Thank you.
My name is Frank Etner, excuse me, and I live in Glen Iris.
Thank you. If you'd like to proceed with your presentation.
I'll do my best to fit into the 3 minutes. And in fact, there's a scroll of images that I've put together that supports a bit of a narrative that I've drafted for this presentation that actually will go way beyond a few minutes. And so I'll have to ask you to maybe skip to the next image or skip to the next image so I can... Good evening to each of you, councillors, staff and fellow local residents. In 2015, I moved with my family from Essendon to Glen Iris. I've been waiting 10 years for this opportunity, so please, if you'll allow me a few minutes to explain my opposition to the state government's improper urban development reforms for increasing the supply of social and affordable housing. The reforms abandon world's best practice towards our national commitment to net zero sustainability by 2050. The reports abandon the prescriptions necessary for good design derived from site context and the architectural heritage of built form. The reforms abandon third-party appeal rights. They even abandon vegetation cover, reducing the developer's allowance from 30% to 10%, a hall pass for overdevelopment and an enemy to the Save Our Suburbs campaign. So my name is Frank Etner. I am a practicing architect. I'll just go to the next image. I believe we all hold an appreciation just how internationally significant as a host our 20th century Camberwell became for advancing architectural ideas first contemplated overseas. The uniquely Camberwell experiments in the pre-war and post-war that had enough time for innovation to emerge with realistic budgets. Thank you. So the pre-war and post-war architects, albeit a different zeitgeist, were nonetheless pursuing a performative architecture, then evolving into a hotbed of experimentation distilled into a uniquely Australian vernacular. Many homes were built as one-off proof of concept proposals. These architects, again, albeit a different zeitgeist, were also thinking about performative architecture. Other homes were developed as prototypes, now frozen in time, ineffective against the mass production builders, insensitive to the value of design experimentation, just like the reforms are. In the past 36-year time block, the CSIRO and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, have concluded that the rate of anthropogenic evolution, human evolution, and whatever rate of adaptation may come of it, cannot keep up with the rate of climate change, thereby reinforcing my own company's thesis, what would architecture look like if it were invented today?
Mr. Etner, I'm going to have to ask you to move towards, much as I'd like to sit through the rest of the talk. Thank you very much.
I think that pretty much encapsulates...
If you'd just like to keep your seat for a moment, I will ask my fellow councillors, do they have any questions of you? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Etner, thank you for your presentation. You touched briefly on performative architecture. Would you mind just elaborating what do you define as performative architecture? Thank you.
Well, there's a lot of this sort of stuff being built all the time, and it's this sort of stuff that these new reforms emancipate to have a lot more of. And none of the reforms recognise the effort that Camberwell is actually a testing ground for a lot of innovative ideas, and performative architecture really fundamentally is dealing with the atmospheric conditions, even orientation, sunlight, thermodynamic capacity, building materials, and they were thinking this way as a lot of the new innovative things that were being done in the turn of the century, a lot of the Frank Lloyd Wright stuff in the US, and a number of Australian architects exploring those ideas. And there's a number of established homesteads that are highly regarded, certainly in our early research. And so performative architecture then went on to be a better experimentation of building geometry, the capability of certain materials going beyond their normal design capacity, and then ultimately having the ability to connect in with other parts of the urban infrastructure so that we start to mitigate the consumption of energy. And that works towards ultimately the industry of a regenerative urban system, falling into line with the expectations of what the IPCC and the CSIRO are calling a net zero 2050 capability.
Thank you very much. I can see there are a lot of other lights on, but I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you. Mr. Etna, you mentioned design experimentation. Could you elaborate or give some examples of kind of design experimentation that you're referring to, and what the issue is with the state government's current approach to planning interacting with design experimentation?
The image up on the screen is a really good example. Those particular architects, including Robin Boyd, and this is part of a study that I've taken a great interest in, particularly with the township of Camberwell, where it seemed to attract a lot of avant-garde thinkers in the way that they design buildings, and that particularly applies to the pre-war period and the post-war period. Even though they look completely different, the spatial narrative that was applied to determine the size of and the look of buildings, all that's been forgotten. It's been washed away by even this hot foot approach to sort of circumvent all the hard work that's gone into years of dedicated planning assessments that deliberately interrogated design to the nth degree, to the point that you virtually are exhausted in trying to justify the proposition. Whereas what we're going to see is a lot more of this stuff coming out of mass-produced construction just for the sake of shoehorning a quotient of the population into being able to tick off that, we're starting to get 100,000 people under roofs. If I've got 30 seconds, I'll give you a personal experience. I was engaged to design, two large developments that never got off the ground, even though the city of Wyndham was pushing for it on a 40-acre site near the old airfield in Point Cook, where we would have fit 1,000 people in there, and a smaller one at the city of Casey. And those sites are now inundated with rough sleepers, homeless people, tents everywhere. And you think to yourself, these people, the developers were willing to pledge their property and raise the capital and hopefully tap into what the former Premier Andrews had publicly advocated as a $500 million slush fund to go into this sort of stuff, and nothing's happened for 5 years. And now all of a sudden we're rushing through by way of compromising the principles that have been hard fought and developed for over 100 years by my profession and the planning profession. And that is a concern as to where that'll end up and how on earth we can ever remediate from that position.
Councillor Franco.
My question was the same as Councillor Friend Pereira, so Thanks.
Councillor Abuki.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank Edna. I just wanted to ask you some questions about you being resistant to mass-produced housing types. I mean, from what I understood is that a lot of the houses that we are trying to preserve are houses that were derivative of styles that were found elsewhere, California bungalows from America, Victorian terraces from the UK, and so on and so on. So can you just, I think, are you saying that you are against pro forma designs or you're against bad designs?
I think the best way to give a definitive response is to look at the way the industry's been working in isolated clusters, so that you see brilliant examples of design excellence in one-off projects here, there and everywhere, but they're not integrated into a what I call a regenerative urban system that really starts to have an impact. And I believe municipalities need to be thinking in that capacity, and the golden opportunity, if you've got federal and state government backing, how on earth are we going to throw all this money at getting all these people off the streets and having a happy environment for everyone to live in? There's so much parkland that I'm not saying that we should be abusing open space, but there's so much Crown land available that could be adapted to incorporate the principles of performative design, which are way more advanced now than they were 20, 50 or 100 years ago. And so what I was trying to find was one of the documents that I certainly work by, which is a government procurement document, and it goes on to say that why good design costs less. And so sometimes they throw a lot of money at refurbishing a dead asset that has zero capability of contributing to the regenerative urban system principle. And other times, with very little budget, you can really come up with something that performs like a natural asset. And basically, I don't know if I've answered the question or if I've veered off, but what I'm trying to say is you can throw a lot of money at individual projects everywhere, but none of that will have any impact on what has become an accelerating an increment in the burning of fossil fuels, and obviously we're not going to hit any of the targets, and certainly the construction industry is only a sector of that pie, and there are other industries that are far more accountable, but there are ways in which we can make our profession, our industry, urban development in as a whole work more effectively. And I don't believe that can be done by just having a bunch of green star ratings and people feeling good about, buying electric cars. And I think that the opportunity of working with a critical mass opportunity where you've got a lot of people that we can, solve some housing problems for, that infrastructure can actually contribute to the net zero 2050 targets.
Okay, thank you. And could I just have one more question, please?
Before you do, Councillor, we've got I just maybe mention we've got a lot of business to get through tonight, so if you wouldn't mind condensing your responses a bit, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
So then in terms of the resolution that was up on the screen, for which we are meeting here tonight, do you agree with the position that Boroondara Council is talking about the planning amendments and how we oppose many of those?
Totally. Yes, I do. Thank you.
Just one more. Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Just quickly, thanks, Chair. My question was along a similar vein. Firstly, thank you for your presentation. Enjoy that, and certainly your expertise on performative architecture is of real interest to me personally and the city more generally, I would suggest. Question to you, what do you want to see from council?
I want to make a confession. the confession is that I probably speak on behalf of a number of practitioners that are exhausted in doing our utmost to document evidence that justifies the way a planning application ought to be assessed. And when you get to the point that you're drawing 120 drawings, knowing full well you've totally resolved all of the empirical and planning obligations, you get to the point thinking, it's just too hard. And it scares away development.
Okay.
It even turns off the property, a number of the property owners saying, it's taken 2 years, I'm just going to sell my house. And you can't get investment happening. Whereas if you had an integration of the planning, of a planning level of assessment with a certain understanding of the design principles, you'd get through the planning system a lot quicker.
I think I understand where you're coming from, and your point's well noted. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you again for your presentation, Mr. Edner. That exhausts the questions. I now call upon Mrs. Pam Whitley to join us at the table.
Thank you, Pam Whiteley from Camberwell. I just wanted to say quickly that I think climate change and our need to have really good design and have canopies from trees, I think is really important, and so that garden space and also the importance of nature to people, which we learnt in COVID. I think those things are really important to be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whiteley. Councillors, are there any questions of this presenter tonight? There are none. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to Christina Brannigan.
Good evening. I'm starting. Okay, my name's Christina Brannigan. I live in Camberwell. Could I have my slides up on the screen, please? I'm speaking in support of Council's report today, and I thank Council and the community and our local MPs and other planning and heritage experts for all the work they've done. We may not have achieved all of our aims so far, but I think many of us are going to continue to work for a better solution. So, the Boroondara Heritage Group, of which I'm a part, seeks that Council continues its work to try and, with heritage experts and involve the community, to really try and resolve the issues, I suppose basically to remove all of our heritage from these new zones or find some other solutions that ensure there's no reduction in their conservation. I just wanted very quickly to highlight a couple of slides. The first one here, just to show you, these are from a seminar actually that we participated in at the Royal Historical Society last month. These images here, I'd like to acknowledge Rob Crocker, one of our residents who took them. These are images showing you, what now is possible, we understand, in each of our heritage precincts. These sorts of developments are going to be possible. Very disruptive and overpowering. Next slide, please. What we also understand really is going to happen is what's on the screen here. So the top of the slide shows you a simulated historic streetscape, a Victorian sort of Italianate streetscape. The bottom image shows you what the new, as far as we understand, the HCTZ zone is going to permit. So these sorts of 3-4 story apartment blocks to be built on non-contributory sites initially. But our concern is that over time, what we can see here is at the bottom, this bottom streetscape, we could consider a street such as Wattle Road in Hawthorne. It's a streetscape which today wouldn't be permitted, and I hope perhaps Mr. Walker might agree, it wouldn't be permitted to be part of a heritage precinct today under the current framework for heritage protection, yet the planning department is proposing that it's now okay to make the heritage street change from the top to the bottom. So, we're really looking at idiotic ideas, or there is actually a plan to potentially, I suppose, over time, remove some of these streets from the heritage overlay. So that's what we're extremely concerned about. One of the key reasons, amongst others, that we very much support what Council's doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, are there any questions of this presenter? There are none. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
I now call upon Jane Oldham to join us at the table. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Jane Oldham, Camberwell, speaking on behalf of Boroondara Community Group. Tonight, I'd like to start by thanking the council officers, not only for your ongoing dedicated work with very specific timetables that were challenging, but on standing firm and for having the courage to call out and continue to call out the way and in the way that you did, the planning reforms and their shortfalls. Councillors, I urge you to consider, if I could have the slide, thank you. Urge you to consider what Mr Walker raised in his supplementary submission, the anxiety in our communities and the stress and dissolution of staff. Ongoing community education of what these reforms mean for objections, review and what's approved and by whom will help us all. It is, though, not acceptable that ratepayers across Melbourne bear all this cost. The recent Select Committee shone a light on the shortcomings of the planning amendments from VC 257, 267 and 274 and the consultation. The opportunity to plan well for density and create livable communities has been squandered by the centralised, silos and rushed work of a team shown to be disconnected from practical implications and community values and their realities. The inquiry did expose shortcomings. It rang serious alarm bells. The Minister didn't appear. Her briefings weren't made available. Industry figures dodged questions and were uncomfortable. And the government MPs squirmed as the truth about so-called consultation came out. The findings were damning. The Minister was found to have inappropriately exempted herself from expected consultation and ignored her own advisory's committee advice on walkable zones. And it's for reasons like this that I am supportive of the additional recommendations tonight. They certainly go a step further in ensuring that the value of that work done by the inquiry and its findings are taken forward. The advice from that advisory committee, and I just want to tease out a few details, confirmed that those reforms were poorly executed. To quote, the need for the housing choice and transport zone, I'll call it the toasty, has not been demonstrated and it should not be applied at this time. The objective of intensified development around activity centres cores can be achieved under existing planning controls. Ergo, we don't need 4 to 6 storey apartments in our neighbourhood streets. The Camberwell Junction's core and catchment should have been substantially reduced. Heritage overlays should have been removed from those 10-minute zones. Even more disturbing, the reforms are built on avocado economics, the idea that huge increases in housing supply will make them affordable. There is no modelling, no sound analysis.
Mrs Oldham, could I ask you to move towards wrapping up? Thanks very much.
Yep. The tragedy, young people and families believing they'll have a home will be let down. Disallowance would have forced negotiation. There were a range of possibilities, but 8 out of the 10 crossbench MPs resigned from their core role to hold a government to account. So where to now? BCG will continue to engage with the department on the next 25 centres. We've seen some small improvements in consultation, but only small. I would therefore endorse wholeheartedly the role or the recommendations that we continue to work with the department to the extent possible to try and achieve much better outcomes. The crossbenchers
Thank
failed
you.
to do so.
Thank you. We do have a question from Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. My question is a little bit long-winded, but I think you'll be able to give me a brief answer. And before the question, I just wanted to say thank you for your knowledge and advice on your analysis of this. With the inquiry into the Victorian Planning Provisions amendments, can you just summarise very quickly how many days were you actually in attendance at the hearing? And I assume you've fully read the report in detail, would that be correct?
Yes, attended all 3 days, so didn't miss a moment. And that actually provided a really good overview of the factors that were at play and how things had come to be. Yep, confirmed a lot of views about I guess about how things had come to be and what factors were at play.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you very much. Appreciate your dedication to dissecting all of this. Thank you.
Councillor, there are no other questions tonight of this presenter. Mrs. Oldham, thank you very much for your presentation. I now call upon Julie Mulhauser to join us at the table.
Good evening. My name's Julie Mulhauser. I'm a resident of Canterbury. I speak tonight to give heartfelt thanks to Boroondara Council, the elected councillors, council officers, and in particular Scott Walker, Director of Urban Living, for your tireless and effective advocacy for a more transparent and accountable process and better outcomes from the Victorian Government planning reforms. It is with sadness and regret that I read in the Council supplementary submission of the negative impacts on the wellbeing of council planners because of the state government's poor process. It is an indictment of how poor the process has been that council planners report feeling stressed, disillusioned and unjustly blamed. Council officers have shouldered a huge responsibility trying to inform our community regarding the sweeping changes with very little information, unreasonably tight timeframes and largely during the council caretaker period. It's my personal view that Boroondara Council played a significant role in securing and contributing to the important Select Committee, whose 3 days of public hearings, unanimous majority report findings and recommendations have put on the public record the state government's poor process with respect to a dearth of public information, narrow stakeholder consultation, and a lack of evidence bases. This poor process has shredded trust, social licence, and community confidence in the stated outcomes. With a further 50 activity centres beginning consultation in 2 tranches, the community justifiably wants to see that the state government has listened to the 20 findings of the Select Committee and is acting on the 12 recommendations. Unfortunately, I personally have no confidence that the state government decision makers will finally provide the long list of missing public information, such as strategic justification, evidence basis, modelling, and infrastructure impact reports. And this is not an unreasonable expectation. This type of information local councils would need to make public if they were doing a planning scheme amendment. We need full transparency, robust evidence, and genuine community engagement to, in Scott Walker's words, restore confidence in the planning system, secure a broad social licence, and ensure that it serves the best interests of all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulhauser. Are there any questions, councillors? There are none. Thank you again for your presentation. That completes the presentation from the community. I will now return to officers for matters arising.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks everyone for your presentations tonight and your words of encouragement. I believe that the concerns that have been expressed tonight by the speakers reflect the many submissions that we've made over the past, I don't know how many months, to the Victorian Government, and in the many submissions that have been on the record here in the Chamber as well. And I think that the revised officer recommendation that's up for debate tonight reflects a lot of the concerns and how we will move forward in our advocacy to the Victorian Government. So I'm happy to take any further questions.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wilson, for your presentation and response then. I've read the Select Committee report with the inquiry into the planning provisions, and I want to ask if you could explain briefly findings 12 and 13, and I don't expect you to look them up or have the report there, but I'm still a little bit confused with the impact on the, and I'll just read the finding. Victoria Planning Provision Amendment VC 267's extension clause of 55, and it also refers to clause 65, presents a substantial change to how residential development assessments are conducted where planning permits are required. Are you able to elaborate a little bit of what the significant change is to clause 65 in particular, and how that would impact future planning applications?
Thank you, and through your Chair. So what that effectively does with the introduction of the new townhouse code and also the changes to those provisions of the scheme, where a development is code compliant, other considerations of the planning scheme are switched off. They're not considered. So that includes local planning policies on environmental sustainability, and whatever else might exist within the planning scheme, because the assessment criteria is confined to the town, and anything that sits outside of that, if it's code compliant, does not fall into consideration for council in its exercise of discretion. So you cannot use that as a reason to condition a permit or refuse a permit as a grounds of refusal.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you very much, Chair. Two questions, if I may. First, I'd like to commend the work of officers done up until this point with all the advocacy and the reporting. And looking forward, you've very succinctly in the motion before us summarised 7 key positions, and I think that should be of great help to the general community. My question then, as we move forward, is will our formal submissions as Council to the State Government on the Tranche 1 and Tranche 2 tram and train zones potentially include the Glen Waverley line stations or zones which are outside, the stations are outside of the municipality of Burundara, but as I understand it currently, the catchment zones overlap into Burundara.
Through yourself, Chair, we have liaised with the City of Stonington, and we have asked to be kept informed about the impacts of those particular activity centres and any catchments as they might impact on Burundara, and that's something that we'll certainly be keeping an eye on and looking at making submissions. We are of the view that there should be no overlap of those catchments into the City of Burundara, given the local characteristics relating to the border between the two municipalities in that particular location.
Thank you very much. So just to clarify, our position would be those catchments shouldn't extend into Burundara. Second question, and only answer in so far as you possibly can, given that the consultation is with the State Government, but can you, for community information, outline as far as you can what we can expect or what the community can expect from the State Government in terms of communication? I understand we're in phase 1, which is understanding place, and is a generic survey that applies from a drop-down menu to all the tram and transport zones. Have you any sense of what future engagements the community may have?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's an exercise in looking into a crystal ball a little bit. It is very unclear at this point in time what further consultation stages will look like and the exact timing of that. There is hints that there will be draft framework plans for discussion with the community reference group sometime in the middle of this year. Don't exactly know what that means, possibly as early as July or late June. But beyond that, we understand that there will be no detailed consultation on draft activity centre plans in the way that Council will consult in putting out a structure plan or an amendment. There are some non-negotiables, we've been told, that relate to the choice of planning controls, so the built form overlay for the commercial core and the housing choice and transport zone for the catchment. Those are pretty much set controls to be used, but we will not, our understanding is to see a detailed consultation on a draft plan.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. To the officers, thanks for your efforts. Also reiterate our appreciation of the work that you've done. My question is regarding the Development Facilitation Program, the Great Design Fast Track for substantial buildings, particularly given they affect some wards in Boroondara more than others, in particular Junction Ward. Just a question to you, can you satisfy me that the advocacy list that you've proposed in this recommendation covers our response on those sorts of projects? I'm wondering whether your intention is that item 4D is satisfactory to cover that, or would you be happy to comment otherwise on our position on those projects?
Through yourself, Chair, the list of advocacy points there don't specifically call out that individual reform. However, the principles sitting behind some of these in regard to development outcomes, design outcomes, and in particular aspects around the role of council as a responsible authority for planning decisions, and third-party processes where there's consultation with the community and also third-party rights would be a factor in our advocacy around outcomes under those sorts of programs.
So just a follow-up, so you can give us some assurance that specifically that government reform can be addressed specifically in some of those advocacy pieces, I guess is the question.
That's correct, and in fact this is really just another element of the development facility program. Concerns in previous submissions about the processes because of their lack of transparency, lack of involvement of the community, and lack of formal recognition of the council position and input to those.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers, for the good work that you're doing. My question is in relation to 4G, the lowering of standards on tree canopy. Point 41 in the 17th of April report from City of Boroondara says that there's a new requirement of 10% canopy cover for sites up to 1,000 square metres. But there's no incentive to retain existing mature trees on the land, which could mean that applicants can use existing trees to meet the standard and then remove them once the development is complete. So I'm maybe seeking a slight amendment to that point G to reflect that major loophole of people removing them once the development's complete. And secondly, have you got any other comments about the need to shut down or tighten up that loophole?
again through yourself, Chair, there's a number of elements in the changes to the res code provisions through the townhouse and low-rise code in particular that's been brought into the planning system that were reflected in that report. And those changes do a number of things. They turn off, as outlined by Mr Wilmson in the previous answer to a question, they turn off other provisions within the planning scheme. So they turn off the ability to reflect tree concerns that are already embedded in the planning scheme. They also reduce the amount of open space that can be provided as part of a development. They do not adequately provide an ability to protect existing trees that was already available in the previous res code, and they have no strong or expectations or requirements for additional or new landscaping to be undertaken. So all of those have a significant impact on the ability to retain trees and the ability to require replacement trees or new landscaping in a broad sense that meets the character and expectations for future tree canopy in Boroondara. There have been strong elements that have been raised in our submissions and submissions up to date, and will be elements that we continue to advocate on. There is an additional component or angle that the council can pursue, and we will be pursuing, and that's something that has been subject to previous decisions, and that's to seek to get tree controls into the planning system. And if ultimately we are successful getting tree controls into the planning scheme, that will give us a specific control that can deal with existing trees and the retention of those trees. So that would be an avenue or future avenue that needs to be pursued to address this tree issue.
Thank you.
Councillor Nolan, does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Scott.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. Question to the officers. Has there been any difference or noticeable difference in the manner in which the Victorian government has consulted with council officers or representatives of the Victorian government in respect of the activity centres along the Glen Waverley line in Stonington in comparison with the activity centres that are located wholly within Boroondara? For example, would it be correct or incorrect to suggest that the government is writing to council in relation to our activity centres and putting us on notice or offering us the opportunity to comment? And are we being afforded the same treatment in respect of those in Stonington, or are we finding out about the ones in Stonington through our own efforts?
Thank you, through you. We have not been directly engaged by the VPA or DTP on the centres within the city of Stonington. We had a site visit recently with VPA representatives and made that point that we've asked that we are involved in any conversations that are happening with regards to catchment planning for those areas. But until now, nothing has been forthcoming on behalf of the department. But certainly we've been engaged on Hawthorn, Glenferrie and Auburn and Kew, not to the extent that we would like. And while it's a slight improvement from what we experienced in the Activity Centre pilot program, there's a long way to go still.
A couple of further follow-up questions. I was pleased to hear council officers or our director outline a potential stance in relation to those other activity centres in Stonington, saying our position should be that they don't overlap into Boroondara, given the natural landscape, the creek, the freeway, I assume those sort of facilities. Have we articulated that position in any, have officers articulated that in any council submissions to date? And following, and look, and I'll ask the second part of that question while you're thinking about his part two of that, so you might want to answer it all as one. If we haven't, do officers have any objection to adding an additional point in respect of our advocacy in relation to the draft motion up on the screen, that we include that as a position in relation to those? And in answering that, I mean, I appreciate that we may not have done research and it might be premature to adopt it as a stance directly without additional work, but any feedback on the thought as to whether we move to include that as a formal position of the elected council?
Through yourself, Chair, perhaps if I just go back to the positions and advocacy that the council has put forward to the DTP around catchments for activity centres and the way they should be considered and viewed. And that has been one where each local consideration and context needs to be examined and looked at and reviewed. And that it is not logical to include walkable catchments with the new housing choice and transport zone where there are barriers to that catchment. And that includes rivers, freeways, railways, major roads that make the catchment that's over the edge of those barriers not an obvious walkable area. And that has been a principle that we've advocated for and put forward in terms of how the planning for these new activity centres should be viewed and taken. And the extension of that in the positions that we've put is that those particular railway station catchments along that Glen Waverley line do not obviously extend into the city of Boroondara. So that's certainly been the positions put in discussions with the DTP. I can't recall whether that's been explicitly put in submissions at this point in that way, but that would be the flow-on implication of applying the principles that have been put in our advocacy to date in future positions. There would be no concern from officers in adding an additional point, but in our view that should be a standalone individual point if that was to be included into an amended recommendation here.
Thank you.
Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It seems that the main point of all of these planning amendments is the provision of more affordable housing, and we are not getting there, and this is not going to get it. And I just wonder whether our motion is strong enough to say that the state government is failing to provide an increase in public housing or to enable an increase in social housing in line with population increases in Victoria. 2, the state government is failing to address the economic environment that hinders the construction of housing that is going to be affordable to people. I probably would like to see an amendment under maybe 4.B that addresses the state government's failure in not addressing the actions that are required to deliver more affordable housing in Victoria.
Chair, happy to respond to that. Again, officers would have no concern in including something that was stronger if that was something that was to be considered by the wider councillor group. That's something that could be included.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair, and I acknowledge it's a second question. To Mr Walker, when Councillor Osborne Smith spoke about 4D, talking about Council's role as the planning and responsible authority, I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate a little bit more on Council's record and position with approving of developments, the high rate of approval of developments, and the fact that if developments are not proceeding, would it be fair to say it's because the developer is not pursuing the active permit, that it's not council that's impeding it? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, happy to talk a little bit around that. And I think there's significant evidence that's been provided by the MAV more broadly around Melbourne, but also for Boroondara specifically, where there is certainly an excess of permits that have been issued that are not being delivered. And in fact, in relation to Camberwell Activity Centre specifically, the gap between permits for dwellings and the delivery is widening. So in other words, more permits are being issued, but less developments are being actually delivered. And that gap in terms of the number of excess dwellings beyond those being delivered is actually increasing. The evidence certainly suggests that the issues that are hampering or impacting on the delivery of development projects for new dwellings are certainly not based on the planning permits, the planning system. It's actually many other factors that are impacting the delivery of these projects.
Thank you. Councillor Tourney, do you wish to ask a question?
No, just would like to foreshadow, happy to move a motion when the time comes.
Well, since there are no other lights, the time has now come. Are you prepared to move a motion?
I am. I'm just wondering if we might adjourn just to include some of Councillor Brookies' suggestions.
We were going to suggest that if there wasn't a firm motion going forward. So could I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Happy to move that.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Sinfield. We are adjourned. Oh, vote. Sorry, we better vote. All in favour of adjourning the meeting? Anyone in opposition? There isn't. We are adjourned. Councillor Tourney, you were proposing to move an amended motion. Are you happy with the motion as it appears on the screen?
Can you just scroll it down a little bit? Is that the only change? Aha. Yes, happy with that.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that amended motion? To the motion as it has been amended.
Oh, the motion is actually to support the recommendation that's up on the screen.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Abuki, were you, your name's popped up, are you seconding? Yep, good. We have a mover and a seconder.
Yes, happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Is there any opposition to that motion, to this motion as it appears on the screen? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Not so much opposition, but I've just realised it could be further strengthened, if I may have a comment.
Is it essential? There's an awful lot of people in the gallery tonight.
I don't want to go into debate, but I think it's important that we could include it. If I may just speak very, very briefly. Again, dot point 4, we talk about advocacy with the Victorian government. Should we include also state opposition parties, as we've done in the past with many motions similar to this, people that are representing, whether it be party, independent or local MPs of Parliament?
I will refer that to the... Sorry? Mr Storer, do you wish to speak to that?
My apologies, Mr Chair, if you were about to do this, but the normal process would be for Councillor Hollingsworth to ask the mover and seconder if they are willing to contemplate the change she is proposing, and if they are not, she then needs to consider whether or not to move an amendment.
I was about to do that on her behalf. Thank you. Councillor Tournay, are you happy to accept the amendment currently being proposed to the motion?
Fine with it. Thanks, Chair.
Are you happy to accept it at this point in time, Councillor Rabuki also? So can we amend the motion and move it as the motion?
Can we just change the text on that to say continue advocacy of the Victorian Government and whether it's opposition?
To all members of Parliament.
All members of Parliament. Victorian Government and all members of Parliament. There you go.
Covering Burundara. Relevant. Local.
And relevant members of Parliament. Happy with relevant? Yep. Happy with that, Chair.
Happy with that?
Yes.
Councillor Rabuki, are you happy with that also? Any opposition? Would you dare at this point in time? Okay, I shall ask you to speak to the motion. Do you wish to speak to your motion? Councillor
Just
Tournay?
briefly, thank you, Chair. So I think we all acknowledge, you know, the amazing work, the incredible work that council officers have done, and that's been very much appreciated by council, and we heard tonight from the community. And the recommendations, which are very thorough, so I won't go into detail about the issues to do with the planning reforms, but it's really key to point out that we do support the need for increased housing supply in Burundara, and the intention of the state government's planning reforms are to be commended, and I want to be clear about that. It's the issues with the approach and the execution that we're seeing in the advocacy pieces up on this officer's recommendation. You know, there are major concerns to do with heritage, and it's not clear. We still lack clarity around heritage and its protection within Burundara and across Melbourne with these reforms. And we've asked for clarity, and we will continue to ask for clarity on that. And there are major concerns around the tree canopy and the clearing of land, and the inability for these reforms. They're just not in sync with the government's own plans for 30% tree canopy cover. So there are issues, we have many issues with these changes to do with our tree cover. But one of the other big issues is our community voices being left out. And I think that's a big concern to all of us. You know, the right to appeal, the right to have a say in what goes on in this community. But for me, and I've said this before, I've said it at the Select Committee, and I also thank the Select Committee for their work, incredible work in such a short time frame and hearing so many applications. But we've said it before, let councils do the planning. Give us the time frame, we have the skills. We've done it before. Our own Campbell Structure and Place plan was accepted as the Campbell Activity Centre plan. So we've proven it, and we are ready to do it, and we've got a really skilled team. And we're the people who are closest to the community. We have the connection, we know this location, we know how to protect the heritage while getting the capacity that we need. So I say to the government, implement the recommendations as advised by the Select Committee. Let council do the work and work with us, not around us. We'll bring the community along, and we'll bring the voice of the community with us. And I say to the community, your voice is so important, and I hope those who haven't already, I suspect probably everyone in the gallery already has, but if you haven't had your say, you've got till the 15th of June to let the government know. And I just say to the community that we will, as you can see from here, continue to advocate on these important matters. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Turney. Since this is now an unopposed motion, I would be eager to move straight forward to put the motion.
I just noticed a very minor typo in 4H. It's extremely minor, but the open brackets before the word along should be moved to before the word namely. So it reads incorrectly. So the open oppose the extension of the train and tram activity centre catchments within Stonington along the Glen Waverley train line, bracket, namely Glen Iris and Gardner and Taronga stations, close brackets.
Councillor Torney, are you happy to accept that amendment?
Happy to accept that amendment, Chair.
Are you happy to move that, change that? Councillor Rabuki, you're also happy with it? Thank you.
Before the word namely.
Are we all done? Are we all finished? I will now put the motion as it appears on the screen. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. For those in the gallery tonight, thank you very much for your patience. I think it was all worthwhile. We'll now move to item 4.2, Draft Burundara Heritage Strategy 2025 to 2041 and Action Plan 2025 to 2029, endorsement for consultation. Tonight, Marie Sheriff, our Principal Heritage Planner, will put the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to present the draft Burundara Heritage Strategy 2025 to 2041, the draft Heritage Action Plan 2025 to 2029, and the draft Historical Society's background paper for endorsement for community consultation. The draft strategy establishes a long vision for heritage in Burundara. It broadens our approach, moving beyond just protection to also include education, promotion and celebration of our rich heritage. It defines what heritage means within our local context and reaffirms Council's ongoing commitment to preserving and honouring it. The strategy is structured around 4 key pillars, each with clear objectives that guide a more holistic and inclusive response. Importantly, it also identifies the key challenges and opportunities we face and addresses them through a comprehensive action plan. The draft action plan details short-term actions for 2025 to 2029, as well as longer-term actions for future consideration. The draft Historical Society's background paper recognises the role of historical societies in preserving and celebrating local heritage and sets out 6 guiding principles for future council support. Officers recommend that the UPDC resolve to endorse the 3 documents for consultation. And just briefly, I'd like to note that the officer recommendation in the published agenda incorrectly referred to the Draft Heritage Action Plan 2025 to 2025 rather than 2025 to 2029. But this has been corrected in the recommendation, I believe, that you can see on the screen. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
We might just wait for those. Tonight, 7 in our audience have indicated a wish to speak. I will call you forward one by one to join us at the table. Just to remind you before you come up, there is a strict 3-minute limit that I think most of you know, and I'd like you to start with your name and suburb. So if I can start first with Judith Vos, if you'd like to join us at the table. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Judith Vos and I live in East Kew. Okay.
Please.
So firstly, I congratulate Council on recognising the need to broaden the concept of heritage from protection of buildings and infrastructure to include historical, tangible and non-tangible factors such as physical and digital collections, education, events, stories, peoples, places and cultural, etc. However, as interim feedback on the draft strategy, there are a number of points I would like to make to better inform the document as it relates to the historical societies and particularly Kew. It appears from the report that we are seen as beneficiaries of council support, whereas the 6 independent historical societies should be seen as assets to Boroondara. They put Boroondara in a place of strength and commitment to protecting its history and heritage practices. The support to increase and improve best practice in applying heritage management principles should be the priority of Council in partnership with the historical societies. The report doesn't explicitly state the relationships with Council officers and departments. This is probably indicative of the need to improve the communication pathways between the historical societies and Council, given we are listed as a key stakeholder in the report, yet have not been considered as such in the lead up to informing this report. The draft strategy notes that heritage management is not intended to simply halt change, but to also acknowledge and reflect the change. This statement clearly supports the historical society's need for proper accommodation and preservation conservation resources to ensure we can continue to protect heritage memorabilia and record history for future generations to understand the stories, timelines and events of our city. The report states there is an emerging councillor interest in Model 1, as expressed in the table of support for historical societies. This model does not reflect the 6 historical societies' work in covering all geographical corners of Boroondara in their respective areas. It is important to understand that the number of historical societies in our city is not negative, but a positive in their ability to facilitate collections, to undertake research, provide broader expertise, events, and garner volunteers to provide many hours of support as well as much needed community input. I understand that Council has a need to put financial values on community buildings as set out in Appendix 3. However, this does not tell the true story of how much added value that historical societies provide to the community and Council if you were to cost the volunteer hours that support the provision of heritage and historical services, as well as external funds raised independent of Council. Just briefly, in 2007, the Kew Historical Society was at the forefront of saving the Kew Courthouse and Police Station as a historical landmark for our city. The Society raised $500,000 towards the cost of purchase of $825,000 paid by Council to the state government. That is 60% of the purchase price. There is other sticks, but I'll go on.
Mrs. Phillips, could you move towards wrapping up your presentation?
I will.
Thank you very much.
We believe we're an important stakeholder. We ask that support for historical societies is not seen as an adjunct to the future actions of this draft heritage strategy, but as an important stakeholder and a resource that deserves the ongoing support in a model that respects and understands how we operate for the betterment of our city. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions of this presented this evening? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, and with everyone's indulgence, I just want to acknowledge that Ms. Voice is a prior councillor and mayor of the city of Boroondara, and thank you for your service. Could you please just tell me the date again of the history with the Kew Courthouse?
2007 was the fundraising time and the purchase of the building, and subsequent also funding from Heritage Victoria and the federal government. Heritage Victoria gave $250,000 for roof repairs, and the government contributed $330,000 for restoration.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mrs. Vose. There doesn't appear to be any further questions.
Thank you, councillors.
George Demetrius.
George Demetrius Hawthorne. Good evening, Council. I speak tonight as a member of Save Boroondara's Bluestone Heritage, a residents group established in 2024 with the aim of preserving Boroondara's rich legacy of 19th and early 20th century historic bluestone laneways, crossovers, curb and channels. Firstly, congratulations to Council for its acknowledgement of community concerns by including within the draft Heritage Strategy and Action Plan, Boroondara's first ever study to investigate the heritage significance of bluestone and concrete roads and laneways, bringing Boroondara into line with the 12 other local and regional councils, such as Whitehorse, next slide, Port Phillip, Hobsons Bay, Marybeck, Melbourne, and Glen Ira, amongst others, who have already undertaken comprehensive studies to assess the significance of their bluestone heritage. Secondly, I would like to provide feedback on what Save Boroondara's Bluestone Heritage would also like to see in the policy. Firstly, a hold put on applications before Council to discontinue any laneways that are constructed bluestone, and a halt on the reconstruction of original bluestone gutters until the study has been completed, as has been best practice with bluestone heritage studies carried out by other councils, such as in 2012, where the then Moreland Council put on hold all capital work laneway reconstructions earmarked to take place as part of their 2011-2012 budget until their bluestone study had been completed in 2013. Secondly, include in the study an assessment of the significance of heritage bluestone crossovers and brick lanes, as other councils have done in their bluestone studies. For example, Whitehorse, you can see here in the local government focus of 2002, and Port Phillip councils. Lastly, a policy to seek state and federal government funding as part of the Boroondara Heritage Strategy, as other councils have done. For example, Monash Council, when it needed funding to reconstruct its historic concrete roads. I know Monash Council meets with its federal and state representatives.
Mr. Demetrius, could you move towards wrapping up? Thanks very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
I believe Boroondara does the same. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you and to give my support to you tonight for your endorsement of the draft Heritage Strategy and Action Plan. Thank you.
Councillor Franco, you have a question?
I think Councillor Nolan was before me, but...
Not on my screen, but anyway.
I'm happy to proceed. Thank you, Mr. Demetrius, for your presentation. I'd just like to be clear about some of the suggestions you've made to us. The put on hold the right-of-way policy, precisely what do you, where we replace existing bluestone with concrete, precisely what do you mean? What are you seeking council to do? Because I know in some locations we put, one up and one down bluestone with some concrete, or precisely what is it that you'd like to put on hold?
Sorry, just to seek clarification, you're talking about the right-of-ways or the gutters?
I wasn't sure, so I wasn't sure what the right-of-way policy referred to, and I wasn't clear, so I'd like to understand it.
Yeah, sure. I've gone through the council minutes from previous years looking for information on right-of-way policy. And I've noticed a number of times people have applied to have laneways behind their houses closed. Now, Marybeck has, if a laneway is not used, if it has bluestone, it can't be closed. And I'd like to make sure during the time when the study's been undertaken that if people apply to have a laneway closed behind their house, it's put on hold until the policy decides whether the laneways are of heritage significance or not. And the same with the bluestone gutters. It'd be pointless to come up and say we've identified 5, bluestone gutters that need to be preserved, and they've disappeared because they've been reconstructed under the policy. So it's just a way of getting surety.
Yeah, maybe we could we just put up the original, that one. Sorry, the proposal that Mr. Demetrius put up. No, the amendment. Oh, sorry. Oh, well.
Go forwards. You'll see it. That's it.
That one?
Yep.
So that relates to laneways that we could potentially close and sell that are lined with bluestone, those old laneways,
Yeah, Moreland Council had a policy where they said if a laneway is not in a heritage overlay area, they're replacing it with concrete when it's reconstructed. And the community asked them to put that on hold until Marybeck went through, or Moreland went through its consultation. So we can see there where they've put on hold until consultation is complete.
Thanks. And the other question I had related to, did you want to put on hold as well our gutter program, or was that part of your presentation, or have I misread that into that?
No, that's part of only the gutters that are original. So they're still intact from the early 20th century or late 19th century. So spoon drains is an example. There's a dressed curb and channel in Burwood Road that dates from the 1860s. I'd like to see that sort of put on hold if there's any plan to reconstruct it until after the policy decides whether it's of heritage significance or not. Because at the moment, there's no bluestone curb and channels that are of heritage significance. So until they're identified, they need to be protected until it can be decided, are they worthy of preservation or are they not?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan, it is now your turn.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Demetrio, for your coming along tonight, your presentation. I'm a councillor in Bellevue, which is in North Balwyn and part of North Balwyn and in Kew East. And I note the difference between late 1800s to the Second World War as having mostly historic value. But I'm just curious to hear your view on the merit of continuing with bluestone in areas that were developed in the 1940s, 1950s, and the example that I often think to myself when I drive down Earl Street, which sits between Kew and East Kew, there's bluestone on one side, which looks really, to me, untidy, and there's concrete curbing on the other. And a number of residents in North Balwyn have asked me why we've got and replacing curb with bluestone in North Balwyn in terms of damage to tyres and in terms of costs. So there's more than ambivalence in there. I'm just curious and be keen to hear your view on those sorts of suburbs developed in the 1940s and 50s.
Yep. With Balwyn, it developed at the time when there was a transition between bluestone and concrete. So you find a lot of streets with bluestone, a lot of streets with concrete. So that's why this heritage study is of great importance, because it requires heritage experts to actually look at it and say, yes, it is of heritage significance, or no, it's not. It might have been rebuilt. It might have been an earlier type, and it's been rebuilt since, and it has no heritage significance. I think the City of Whitehorse said that the only heritage significance is in original intact bluestone curb and channeling. Bourne is that transition phase, so you're going to get some streets with concrete and the next street will be with bluestone, so it just depends when it was constructed. So, and there was that phase out in the late 1940s, early 1950s, from bluestone curb and channeling to concrete. But that's why there's that importance of deciding what is significant and what is not significant. Personally, myself, I see great significance in all bluestone for its ambience, for its value as showing the development of the city. So the earlier parts of the city had bluestone, and as we move out, it's replaced by concrete. So I just want to find out what's significant, what not, because at the moment, there's nothing of significance in the city of Boroondara, and you see streets being reconstructed, and you ask, isn't that significance? And I've got to admit, the engineers have been good with this, saying, look, we're engineers. We don't look at it from heritage. We don't know if it is or not. But council has asked us to reconstruct it as one only. So it's up to the heritage consultants to look at it. A lot of the other councils I've shown you have taken a bluestone from engineering to actually a heritage issue and come up with the reports. And they're fantastic reports. You can see there, colour photographs, they've gone right through all the records, and that's great. And roads are reconstructed, there's no complaints, no issues, no letters to councillors. Everyone's quite happy. And that's what I like to see, knowing that, yep, that's significant. I know it's going to be retained. That's not significant, then it doesn't need to be retained. So that's the main issue that is of concern in heritage. Yeah.
So just quick follow on, I'm hearing there, I think towards the end, that if we had the right people looking at the heritage, rather than doing consultation suburb by suburb, suburb by suburb, someone who's got the view across Boroondara, a view of the transition through Bull, and might be better placed than just sort of going out into a community consultation, which I think could be a bit of a suboptimal way to go about it. Would that be, is that correct?
Yeah, yep. Definitely.
Thank you.
Ta.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you, Chair. I admire your dedication to the cause of bluestone and the passion. I'm just wondering, apart from the heritage consideration, because you obviously know quite a lot about this, what are the advantages or disadvantages of bluestone over concrete or other treatments from an engineering or a functionality point of view? Is one better than the other if we discount heritage, or how does the engineering and functionality interplay with heritage?
Sure. Well, the workmanship in the bluestone is amazing. A lot of it was laid on sand, and there was no mortar used. So it's all fitted in perfectly, and it's lasted. It's lasted. If you look at the bluestone from the 19th and early 20th century, there's no problems with it. And you know, if it sinks, you just lift up the part that sinks. You don't have to redo the whole lot. Bluestone doesn't crack. It doesn't crumble. I've looked at sandstone, which is the stone in New South Wales, and the problem is that it deteriorates very quickly, and it always has to be replaced. But bluestone you see through our churches, through our buildings, they've been there and they'll be there for the next 100, 200 years beyond. If you've been to Europe, you know stonework has been there for centuries, and it's the workmanship we want to preserve. And yeah, bluestone itself will not, unlike concrete, you've probably seen lots of time concrete's crumbled and they've had to redo it again. And this is concrete that's been laid in the 1970s, 1980s. Bluestone will not crumble or crack.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Quick question, just thank you for your interest also in this, I think, a really important part of the heritage of our city, so good for you. Quick question just on your opinion as to bluestone laneways that are redone in that shaved stone effect. There's a few examples around our city. I appreciate it's very much not the original laid bluestone, but a bluestone effect with, I think, shaved pieces of bluestone set in concrete or some other aggregate. Can you just give us your comments on that sort of treatment?
Yeah, I'll refer to the Merribeck policy. Merribeck covers Brunswick, areas with lots of bluestone laneways, including consultation with the Disability Advisory Committee. So no one wants bluestone that's dangerous for people in wheelchairs, women with prams, etc. So where there's high traffic, then please, have it that way. So it's not a problem.
So, for example, in areas that might become pedestrianised or walkways, then that would be acceptable to you potentially?
If it's dangerous, once again, Merribeck has a policy. If you go through Merribeck, they have that shaved stone, especially where the laneway crosses over the footpath. So there's no danger. But the rest of it, where it's not highly trafficked, they've kept the original. So that's acceptable from a heritage perspective. So.
One final question that's relevant to the motion. Thank you, Mr. Demetrius. I'm assuming we've got a motion, a draft resolution that recommends the draft heritage policy go out for public consultation, and I am wondering whether, Save Our Bluestone, Save Burundara's Bluestone will make a submission outlining the points you've made today, and whether that's something we need to take into consideration in the motion today, or whether we can wait till it comes back from public exhibition. So my thinking is, I won't say what my thinking is because I'd be breaching the question.
Councillor Franco, I think we can make that decision. We're only seeking permission tonight to go out for a public consultation, and we can pick up your comments later as part of that, but we don't have to change the motion tonight, I believe. But thank you for your submission, if you wouldn't mind. All right, there's no further questions. Mr. Demetrio, thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor.
I call upon Mrs. Yvonne Bauer to come and join us at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Yvonne Bowyer. I live in Surrey Hills and I'm speaking on behalf of the Surrey Hills and Mont Albert Progress Association.
Thank you.
The community... Sorry. The Community Heritage nomination process has seen 2 properties in Surrey Hills nominated. Councillors decided at 2 urban planning delegated committee meetings to write to the Minister for Planning for authorisation to commence a planning scheme for these 2 properties. Our association has recognised and raised with council officers further properties in Surrey Hills that we believe warrant further investigation for heritage protection. We thank council officers for their work and agree with the recommendation that is Action 1.3 in the draft Warrendara Heritage Action Plan 2025 to 2029, and that is to prepare and implement a heritage gap study of Surrey Hills. And thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillors, are there any questions of this speaker tonight? There are none. Thank you very much for your presentation. I call upon Susan Barnett to join us.
Good evening, councillors and council officers. My name's Susan, or Sue, as most people call me, Barnett. Used to live in Surrey Hills, now in Mont Albert.
Thank you.
I'm president of the Surrey Hills Historical Society, and on behalf of our members, I welcome this opportunity to say a few words about the draft heritage strategy document. Firstly, we welcome the recognition that there needs to be a gap study of the Surrey Hills built heritage, and acknowledge and appreciate the work of officers Marie Sheriff and Emil Dixon in this space. Secondly, as a society, we welcome the recognition of a broader concept of heritage, of what heritage means and of the ways in which Council can assist in preserving it for our community. Many of the components recognised by the community in its response to last year's community consultation, which have been articulated in this document, are activities that many of Boroondara's historical societies have been actively undertaking for years. Whilst this is not the forum to discuss aspects of the document in detail, I would like to touch on a couple. It is important to reiterate the point made in both the Boroondara Historical Societies Association document and individual societies' submissions to the December discussion paper, that is, that local history is best collected and managed by local people who have developed detailed knowledge and are able to make connections that are perhaps not obviously seen by non-locals. And that the desire of all the historical societies remains to undertake heritage work in their own communities for the broader community as well as their own. Moving out of Surrey Hills was not a desired outcome for us as a historical society, and one that we do not necessarily think is to our long-term good. Whilst accepting that better and timely communication between the societies and Council is important and necessary, it needs to be recognised that historical societies are largely managed by retirees, a great many of whom have been active in the community over many years and served on numerous committees. Attending ever more meetings and filling in ever more surveys, a suggestion of this document, is one of the huge negatives that makes it hard for groups like ours to attract committee members. Timely communication is also essential. Receiving the draft discussion paper near midday on Christmas Eve was not acceptable. After protest, the time frame for response was extended, and this extended timeline was met by all the historical societies. Receiving this document at a similar time last Friday has not made it possible for it to be discussed by any committee.
Ms Barnett, if you wouldn't mind moving towards wrapping up your presentation.
One paragraph, thank you, Chair.
Right.
We would welcome talking in detail about this document with any councillor at a future time, and would invite those who have not yet been to the Mailing Heritage Centre to do so, to better understand the breadth of what historical societies voluntarily undertake for the community and the huge number of hours that are expended by those volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, are there any questions of this speaker? There are none. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
I now call upon Mr. Graham Lovell to join us. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, councillors and fellow residents. I've lived in Neve Street, Hawthorne East since 1991, and I'd just like to relay a situation where the council has performed extremely well in treating the heritage aspects of bluestone in the street. Neve Street was a neglected little street with fractured bitumen and with a rare example of spoon drains, original spoon drains dating back to probably the 1890s. And in 2007, council approached the residents with 3 different alternatives for the gutters, conventional gutters. The residents were very attached to their spoon drains and basically pushed back and asked that the council retain the spoon drains. As a result of that, the council decided to install drains below the original spoon drains, pipe-type drains, and then to reinstall the spoon drains you see in the photo there. They're 5 pavers wide, and they look absolutely magnificent against the heritage house there, number 1 Neve Street and number 3 Neve Street adjoining. Next, please. Just go through them quickly. There's another photo of number 1 Neve Street with its original double-storey cast iron lace. And again, the spoon drain really offsetting it very, very well. There's beautiful photos. Next, please. This is Islands Dairy, and it also has a heritage classification on Murnion Grove. And again, at the corner there of Neve Street, you can see the spoon drains reinstated as they were to respect the heritage of the street. And again, please. Number 7 Neve Street, looking beautiful and magnificent, beautiful 1920s house, and offset very, very well by the work that's been done to preserve the spoon drains. And again, this is 19 Anderson Road on the corner of Neve Street, once more with beautiful spoon drains. It also has a heritage classification. And the last one, please. And again, this is 1 and 3 Neve Street. As I said, 1 Neve Street is a heritage classified house. Somehow 3 Neve Street isn't, but it's also a beautiful Victorian house. And just like to congratulate Council on the work that was done then to do this and to achieve this result, because it's really set the street up beautifully and respects the heritage that was there. And it's just this rare example that's been retained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovell. Are there any questions, Councillor? Councillor Franco.
One question, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lovell. In your view, is under our existing policies, is the treatment in Neve Street under any potential threat? And does Neve Street, I suspect I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway, do the properties on Neve Street have a heritage overlay across all of them as an area, or is it only significant properties there? And under our existing policies, what potential threat is there to Neve Street and what we've seen there?
There are only 3 properties in the street that have a heritage classification. So there's no recognition at present, as I understand, of the significance of something like this, the sort of spoon drains carrying back to over 100 years ago. So it's very important to recognise the value of that and the way this contributes to the atmosphere of the street and the heritage of it.
Okay, and just a final question: are you happy with the proposals in the draft plan going out for consultation in the form that they are?
Totally supported, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Burkey.
Just a quick question. I obviously don't live in the salubrious parts of Boroondara. I don't think I've seen gutters like that. I just had a quick question. Our climate has changed. We have torrential rain. Just making an observation. Do those gutters serve the times where we have lots of rainfall well, or are there instances where we have water over the road?
The original spoon drains were actually deeper, and you could bottom out your car with them, and in some places they put steel plates across, they could hit the driveways. And they had no pipe-type drains below these. Now, one of the main things then was to bring it to a modern standard, so when they lifted them, they actually put pipes underneath and grates to be able to get the water away, and then basically put the spoon drains, the shallower spoon drain, back in place. But the effect is still there, and they really look beautiful. Residents are very pleased and attached to these drains.
Thank you, Mr. Lovell, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Christina Brannigan.
Thank you, Christina Brannigan from Camberwell. If I could have my slides up, please. But first of all, I'm speaking on behalf of the Boroondara Heritage Groups, and we wholeheartedly support this great document, and I'd like to very much thank Marie Sharif and Emile Dixon for, I'm sure, I know what's been an amazing amount of work that you've done, so we really appreciate that. Thank you to both of you and everyone else involved, all the councillors and past councillors who we know. It's been quite a journey to get to this point, and so we're very grateful, and we know lots of people in the community are very grateful for the work that's been done. And there really are some fantastic ideas here, we think. So we're very excited and hoping that it goes forward and to participate, hopefully, in the things that come out of it. I just do have a couple of slides which really try to go to the question of, why have a heritage strategy? A couple of answers to that. And one of the key things really is the importance, we think, to Victoria of the protected heritage in Boroondara. So, our heritage, as I'm sure most of you or many of you know, is world class here in Melbourne and in Boroondara. And we actually have 15,000 heritage places around about protected in Boroondara. And there are only 186,000 local heritage places in the whole of Victoria. So we've actually got a pretty significant proportion of the whole of Victoria's heritage that we look after. So very important we have a strategy to look after it. And as the thematic study for Boroondara said, most of the significant architects of the 19th and 20th century have worked in today's city of Boroondara. So we have got the best of the best here, and we shouldn't feel ashamed of that or think that we're NIMBYs. We're the custodians of really important heritage here for the nation and for Victoria. And we've got over 80, I might be wrong, but I believe it's well over 80, might even be 100 built heritage precincts here in Boroondara. So if we could go to the next slide, just to finish off. Another part of why we need to move and have a heritage strategy and protect, conserve and promote the appreciation of our heritage here in Boroondara that we look after for everybody, it's really because the recent past and today shows us that much of it will disappear over the next generation if we don't do all three of those things, which is what really a strategy helps us to do. So all those properties you see there, except for the two on the right-hand side, have been demolished in the last few years. In fact, the one at the bottom on the left is in Rochester Road in Canterbury. I was just told a couple of days ago that that's been demolished. So all those houses on the left-hand side in the centre have gone. And on the right-hand side are properties extremely likely to go. So if we don't protect, if we don't conserve, if we don't look after the precincts once they're created, if we don't fight the ham, cheese and toasty zone, we're going to lose these wonderful places. So I congratulate Council on their work and hope that, we can be involved in these exciting ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Spot on in time, Ms. Brannigan. Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Brannigan, for your presentation and wonderful to see the images there. Are you able to advise the properties that you've stated have since been demolished, roughly what time frame
that it happened?
2 years, 5 years?
The one on the top left-hand side, some of the councils will remember that's Mangara Road. So I believe that's about 18 months to 2 years ago it was demolished. I believe it's still an empty block. The one in the centre, the beautiful house in Kew at the top centre, I think that's probably more like about 4 years ago. And there's a construction monstrosity that's partially built that's just there at the moment on that road. The bottom left, as I say, I believe that's happened very, very recently. The one in the centre at the bottom is, it's near Mangara Road. I believe that happened late last year, that was demolished. The top right-hand side is the flats on Burke Road, on Riversdale Road, Rotherwood, that have a demolition permit. We understand, likely to be demolished for luxury apartments, just been resold. And the bottom right-hand side is a property, I'm not sure if that's sold, but very, very recently, in the last few weeks, it was up for sale, and that's again on Mont Albert Road, I believe, or Canterbury Road, as you can see, being advertised with no heritage overlay. I mean, there are many, many more properties like this that have gone, many, many more, yeah.
Look, thank you very much. I understand your sentiment is this is happening at a rapid rate, and so I appreciate that you're saying that this is the right time for Boroondara Council to be looking at a long-term strategy. And thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you again for your presentation. There appears to be no further questions. Thank you. I now call upon Soban Khan.
Thank you. I'm Siobhan Khan. I'm a resident of Camberwell, and I'm also lucky enough, I guess, to be living in the Hassett estate in Camberwell, which is an intact interwar estate. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank the council really sincerely for all the work that you've been doing, particularly with regards to the planning amendments, but also in terms of putting together a 10-year plan to protect our precious heritage. So I support the draft heritage study, and I see heritage as the equivalent of our green wedges from a cultural perspective. They're irreplaceable and something special, and I think that we all have a responsibility to act as stewards to protect heritage for future generations. And I know that my mum and dad fought really hard to protect heritage back in the day when they were here. So as I said, I've been a resident in Boroondara and in Camberwell and in Baldwin for many years, and I've gotten to know a lot of people through a common appreciation of heritage. It creates links between people and it enhances our lives in so many ways, including, for example, me being co-opted as treasurer for the Camberwell Historical Society. Just wanted to wrap up and say that heritage is incredibly valued by people of Boroondara. And so, yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. Questions, councillors? There don't appear to be any. Thank you very much for your presentation. Officers, I'll throw back to you for any comments.
Chair, I might just kick off in just making a brief comment and thanking all the speakers for the feedback. Lots of words of support for the heritage strategy and the approach being taken in the draft Heritage Strategy Action Plan and Historical Society's paper. And just to reiterate that tonight we're actually asking the council to consider endorsement of these documents for the purposes of exhibition. So we'll have an opportunity to receive comments and feedback from the public, and from many of the people this evening will no doubt put submissions in a formal way through that formal process. And it is in light of those submissions that you will need to consider your final position on the strategy when we bring that back to you after that exhibition process. That's it, Chair. We'll hand back to you.
Thanks very much. We have some questions. Councillor Rabuki.
Through you, Chair, no question, but I'd like to foreshadow a motion.
Terrific. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Question perhaps for Ms. Sheriff, thank you. I just wanted to ask if your team has considered with the policy implications under the legislative framework, if we could also include Public Health and Wellbeing Act, where we have the Heritage Act, the Planning Environment Act, etc., etc. Now, look, I understand this is just to go to exhibition, but it's just something that every time we have a community member come and present in the chamber, this is very much about personal, social connection to our community. It's a sense of self, sense of belonging, sense of purpose, and it deeply embeds a strong connection between community. And we've had many presenters talk this evening about the importance of them working together on advocacy for heritage protection and conservation. Have you considered whether or not we could actually include the Public Health and Wellbeing Act under the legislative framework?
And through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. I would need to look into the relevance of that particular act. I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure at this point.
Look,
but
that's fine. Thank you. I asked that question without any notice beforehand, so I just wanted to flag it as a consideration. I did a little bit of research, and Division 3 of the Act talks about municipal health, public health and wellbeing and council matters, including council plan, community plans. So just something for notation for later. Thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Also a question without notice to you, Ms Sharif. Thank you again for all your considerable work and your team's work on this, I think, terrific document. Very minor point of mine. It's to do with some of the wording in the draft strategy. I have a simple request regarding some wording, and I'm not sure whether we need to acknowledge that or whether I need to put that up as an amended motion, or whether it can be just something that could be undertaken to be looked at by you before final release of this document. It's just as simply in relation to your proposed long-term, looking beyond 2029 plans, in particular that which refers on page 257 to a heritage centre. You have the word virtual. I would simply be requesting that that word be removed such that it gives flexibility for, if not just a digital, but a potential physical centre that we may look at in the years to come in this or future councils. So I'm not quite sure how best to manage that.
Do you want to respond to that at this time? Thanks.
yes, through you, Chair. The virtual heritage centre is distinguished from the Burundara Heritage Hub, which is another action further down. And the Burundara Heritage Hub is where we would envisage potentially physical place as opposed to an online, yeah.
Thank you. You've answered my question. I wasn't sure what that word hub meant. Thank you.
Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions of the officers. First one is section 4. The strategy is it's been extended from 10 years, which I think is our standard, to 16 years. And I understand the explanation is that some of the objectives need more time. But why? I'm just interested in knowing why 16 years. Is that because it's a multiple of 4, or is there any reason for 16 years? Because it's probably going to create a precedent.
Thanks, Chair. There is a logic to that, and it is the multiples of 4 that it would match 4 action plans, 4 consecutive action plans of 4 years of each plan.
Thank you. That's very logical. Again, through you, Chair. The second question is, if the mover is probably going to move the officer's recommendation, I just want to understand that the recommendation number 1 is that we go out to consultation. So there'll be an opportunity, of course, for the community to present to us again post the consultation. So we're going to get sort of 2 bites at the cherry, so to speak, from a consultation point of view, which is fine. The question I have is number 2 there, which is authorising the director to make any appropriate changes to the draft before it goes out. The question I have is to the officers, did you hear anything tonight that may result in there being any changes to the consultation document before it goes out?
Through yourself, Chair, no. There was nothing that was raised that would result in any changes at this point. That item there, however, is there for if there is any small or minor corrections or typos that are picked up before we go on exhibition, that we want the ability to be able to make those minor changes.
Since that seems to have exhausted questions, Councillor Rabuki, we shall return to you for a motion.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I would like to move a motion to accept the officer's recommendation up on the screen.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Osborne-Smith?
I'd be happy to second that. Thanks, Chair.
Fantastic. Is there anyone opposed to the motion as it appears on the screen? There is no one. Councillor Rabuki, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I would just like to thank the team for their work in producing the document. It's a very good draft document, very comprehensive. And I'd also like to thank members of the community who have had significant input into the document and who have met with many of us new councillors quite a few times to bring us up to speed on the importance of heritage, and I think we've captured many of those in the document. I also look forward to further feedback from the community that will shape the final draft of the document. Thank you.
Again, since it's not opposed, Councillor Osborne-Smith, I'd propose to move straight forward, if that's okay with you. Or do you want to say a very quick word?
I would just like to add a few words to Councillor Abuki's comments and endorse very much what she said, to thank the team for many months of professional and considered work in this strategy, and also to thank our very passionate members of the community for their love of heritage in this municipality and everything they've done to help us protect it. So, thank you.
Thank you. I shall now put the motion as it appears on the screen. All of those in favour? There appears to be no one opposed. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. I shall now move to the final items. Item 5, general business. Councillors, are there any matters of general business? None? Urgent business? There are none. Confidential business? There are none. Before I close this meeting, I want to thank you all who have joined us this evening. I declare the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting closed. Thank you.